I'm just gonna leave it up while I check that that it actually comes up live and whatnot. And the topics could be many. You know, I was realizing if I start this Sunday hangout again, I should choose a time and set ahead of time, but whatever, I'll just catch whoever's on. And maybe no one, because if you don't warn anybody and you have just a couple thousand, well, I could talk about that actually. The number of subscribers. Well, that's a lot of people. A lot of people have watched my videos. On the other hand, I think how many subscribers I have is like how many you get if you make videos on average once a day for 10 years. So now it's weird with the algorithms. Who knows how it's working? But still, just 2,000, and it still hasn't shown up on my live stream thing. But it's probably going, because this is going straight to YouTube because I'm doing a hangout, and I'm gonna take the URL and just make it public, which means we could get trolled. And we take that just as a natural consequence, you know, like living on a volcano. So by the way, here's the lava area, and here's the whole island. So it's just a little tiny area, though. You know, I mean, I think it is dangerous to go to the island now. So these are the flow lines, by the way, these blue lines, like where the water would go. That tells you a little bit about where the lava would go, but the lava can back up and like wax, you know, and go over to a neighboring one. Yeah, it still hasn't come up. Isn't it supposed to come up there? I think so. Oh, maybe not actually. That's right, because maybe this is different. So how do I go with that over there? I guess I could type it. I'll just type it. Fuck. Or actually, maybe it'll be up. Let's see. I'll just type it in. I hate typing these codes. I've got a code here. Utah.be/weird number. YT. Okay. Utah.be YT5UU. This is a link you guys must be using if you do. 3 capital X TK. It's probably going to come through here. Yep. Yep. Okay, so I didn't write down the topics. Let's see. So topics are open because the point of this is if anybody shows up. Oh, hey, Barklord, that'd be great. So I'm about to post the link. And also, if we get a few people, I can always take the link away, reducing the danger of... Oh, yeah, I can't paste over there and then... God, fuck that. Okay, so over here, I got to do this. I'm taking time to post the link. I've got 2 computers. One where I'm watching it. Hey, Barklord. So I was going to go just through this. So this is like, this is a neighborhood. I can't fucking scroll it over there. It's so confusing when you haven't done this for a while. Yeah, there we go. So this is Leilani, and here's the thing. So I lived, if you're curious, I have family that lives in Paradise Park. I also my brother lives down here in Kalapana on some of the more fresh lava, but on the edge. And you know, he's evacuated and also going to Europe. The street performing in the spring and summer over there. I lived various places. I lived up here, this little place up here, but then I also lived in Hilo. This is Hilo. So Hilo's way far away from here. We would take 11 down to 130 to go out here into Puna. And this area where I'm putting my cursor is the East Rift Zone. And it's a place where the island's cracking apart. And there's lots of room for lava to flood in there. It sometimes happens. Last time it happened was 1955. This is very similar to it. All of the lava in the summit, which is this area over here, you can see these are all, this is a crowdsourced map of what's going on. The lava was up here. The lava pools were full. Here's Bu'o'o, where it's been flowing down. So this whole thing's a mountain. Somehow the cork popped out. Lava's leaving the summit, leaving Pu'o'o, and flowing down in this direction, all the way down here. And here's where it's come out. Earthquakes show that it hasn't seemed to have gone further, though in 55, you know, it came out down here. But what's going on now is it came out, a lot of it came out along here. It all flowed, this section, it all flowed down to the ocean, which is good. Basically, the quicker it gets to the ocean, you know, then there's a chance it just keeps flowing that way. Right now, though, those have slowed down. It's back down to up here. It's backed up to up here, and it's heading out this way, and will follow something like this blue line. You know, it could switch blue lines. And go out here, sort of threatening this place called Hawaiian Beaches. So this is actually a nice neighborhood, which doesn't mean it's fancy. It's not all $1 million houses, but there's $500,000 houses because it's down this freeway. I had friends that worked in Hilo with me that bought houses out here. But it's also farms and bed and breakfasts and, you know, that kind of thing. There used to be a road. Well, there is a road, but it's under lava now here. That would go down to the coast there. So, okay, I was gonna do this thing though. So let's see, how do I do that? I think what I do, I get the link. Get this link. Go to the video. In a while, you guys. Gals. No, I haven't put the link up, Barklord. I'm sort of being slow about it. I didn't expect to have somebody right away. So let's see. Right here. That's that link. I used to do this just on the one computer, so that's part of what's confusing me. But now I've got it playing over on another computer. Is that too much? Now, if that's too much, if that doesn't work, I guess the auth, leave the auth user stuff off. Maybe this. All right, so it's in there in the comments so people can see it. You know, I think I won't put it in the description. That's harder to remove, and does open you up to hackers. They'll probably come in. I've had people, hey, Barklord. And does open you up to hackers. They'll probably I've had people, hey, Barklord. You got the video open as well. I can hear. It's about 10 seconds behind or whatever. So I'll let you sort that out and speak up when you want to. But so anyway, so this is pretty, you know, amazing, because here's the thing. Usually what happens, like a couple years ago, this town, Pahoa, right here was threatened. What normally happens downslope is way up here, the lava comes out, and in that case, it came out and started going down towards Pahoa, and it takes a while. It's just oozing down like the blob. So this, however, in Leilani, is more where the ground is just cracking into, methane flames and stuff come out, and then those cracks started spewing lava. So right underneath you. So like even if this finishes, it would be hard to sleep, you know, at night when lava can actually open, because it's generally slow. But if it's going to open up right underneath you, then that's not slow. It'll just, a crack opens up, suddenly it burns your house down. You're muted, Barklord, which is not me doing that. You have to unmute. That sounds like you might be having open mic. I hear some background noise. So what's going on right now is this fissure. So it was going off over here, and then these red lines went down to the ocean, right? And they're still going, but they say they're just draining out. And now it's going off over here between 21 and 8, with 7 being the biggest thing. And it's going both this way and going down the hill a new way, but also up this way. And up this way, it's going to cover this power plant. There's a geothermal power plant right here. And it's already covered one well, which it's never happened in history. Nobody knows what's going to happen. These 8,000 foot deep geothermal wells, they don't want it to like start spewing gases from deep in the ocean or anything. But they think it'll just be sealed by the lava. They plugged them up by their own means. They wanted to put a metal plug where they just drop gravel in or something like that. Pump cold water to stop it, the activity. But anyway, and then so there's this one that's heading south, and then it also leaks up north. It got here like 12 hours ago, but it's going kind of slow now. So I don't know how far it's gone down, but theoretically it'll follow this blue line. And the lava is like kind of like wax, and it can go head off to the side, making its own shape of a river and kind of transfer blue lines. Like for example, here, it was coming down here, and then, this one was going here, and they always have the edge that they build, of cooled stone. So it probably hit that, and it transferred over to this other blue line. And so in the end, my dog hates the stove. Just randomly barking at the stove. Right, the stove. I know. Propane. Oh, what's going on? You're silly. What, you want to get on camera? You're cute. Okay, let's try to do that. Here we go. Dog on the camera. Very concerned. What? 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 What's going on? I know, right? Stop it. Nobody wants to hear that. No, nobody. It's not exciting. No, nothing's going on. She's trying to make something out of nothing. Barklord, are you there? Can you unmute? Did you attach by the second link or the first? So here, I don't know if you're having some problem or what, but so all of these fissures open up. They're all numbered in the order they open up. So there's 1, 2, and they went back and forth. It's basically a big crack. They all were in a line along here. And then all of these have put out a little bit of lava, mostly in here. this section. But a weird thing here is way back on the same line across the main highway, like the last highway my brother can use, it's steaming. There's cracks also on this road, and they just have metal plates over it. And my brother just went across them yesterday, and like they're steaming. Oh wait, you can't see it. I did not share on my screen. Stop it. Seriously, do you need attention that much? Come on. Come on. There we go. So this is like the lava thing I was talking about. It's over here. So all of these things are fissures that opened up, numbered in order. And basically, there was a big lava pooling with these ones. And then now this center thing is going off, and this thing are like the latest output of it, right? And also this thing going down this way. Right, so this guy is putting off something that manages to flow down the mountain this way to the ocean, which is great. Basically, at this point, I mean, the mountain has lava going to it. It's got to flow somewhere. So, you know, it's bad it takes a neighborhood, but it's good when you start to know which way it's going to go. So it was going down here, but by backing up the mountain, now it gets into these flow lines that are going to go this other way. So instead of down here, it's going to go up this way. And like I say, it has a way of crossing from one line to another. You know, if it crosses from this line to this line, it still goes down this way. And I think I showed earlier, for example, here's the line. These two flows met, so it bends down and it ended up getting on this other line and making two different entries. Okay, so part of the current flow from out of here is going down here and hugging along this the same line, doing this kind of thing. You know, it could go over here and go on the other side of Mackenzie State Park. But then there's another flow from the same pool heading this way. It was heading really fast, slowed down in the day. They've been going more at night, which is interesting. So Barklord, I heard you on mute, but there was no voice if you were talking. But I heard like just this very faint noise of an extra mic. Well, right now the big cracks. There was some cracks from an earthquake. So the question is there going to be big cracks from the earthquake? So they've had some cracks from the magma going under these roads where the crack will be like 3 feet in the air and 3 feet across. They've had some earthquake cracks in Volcano, which is oops, I'm looking in the wrong place. So take 11 out here. So Volcano's already all the way up here, and it's this village, Volcano Village, this town, near the entry to the, you know, the national park and stuff. They had some cracks up there, and that was because of the earthquake and because the whole island is resettling. Whereas down here, they've had these big cracks that, like I say, are like 3 feet apart and 3 feet vertically, because lava, right here is where the island is sort of cracking and sort of slowly, you know, sliding into the sea right along here. So the lava can get in there, and then it pushes it, and there's room and soft dirt and dirt that's, you know, loose because it's cracking apart, and it can shove its way in there and create pressure, which expanded all this area. While up here, it's you know, getting smaller, it's deflating because the lava up here has all flowed out, and it's for sure running down channels in what's kind of a little mountain ridge here and backing up here. And so there's places down here where it can flow down this way or it can flow down that way. And also the lava is kind of in this whole area. So, you know, if there was another soft place to come out, it could come out on either side. If it comes out on this side, this is really beautiful coastline, not as many people, but it would be terrible to lose, like they lost Kalapana and stuff in the 80s. But if it comes out on this side, which it is, then there's all these lines that go more close to the populated areas, this being a big populated area. And then you can see right here this whole chunk, which is relatively safe. I mean, it has to come out really high up the mountain. But it, like Hawaiian Paradise Park, did get hit in the 1700s and stuff. So do this. So here's my name, Craig. So everybody knows that. That's all. You know, I mean, it feels a little stalkery, but the thing is, you know, I have people that I've watched on YouTube, and this guy that was building a robot and moved to Panama a few years ago when I moved to Maine, and you know, I took the clues I had and found him on Google Maps just because I wanted to see his little island that he's building up from space, you know. So sort of the same thing, but whatever. I mean, I have a Kickstarter I've wanted to do for years. We're working on one right now for doing a debate site, and you know, I'd be doing the work for that as my LLC, and you know, when I tell you my LLC, you'll be able to look up who I am and where I am and all sorts of stuff. So I've known it's coming, but anyway, you know, it's a bit weird, you know. Oh yeah, and a guy asked me, I forget who it was, but there's a guy with my in real life name writing science fiction stories. They're for sale on Amazon. Is that me? And I'm like, that fucker writing with my name. It's fucked up, man. So maybe I'll write under Piero, or maybe I am him and I won't. That's all a ruse. Okay, what was I going to show you? Okay, so yeah, got a lot of people doing videos lately. Yeah, let's like this guy. Let's show what's going on. There's a crack. You can't hear this, right? I think you can't hear it. That's from the lava. You probably can't hear that unless they've changed. Fisted Boons is this guy. I didn't see these comments. There isn't any lava flow. It's entirely CGI. Lava is deep fake. Right. Yeah, no. So this is a guy who actually moved over there in 2014 when the land got cheap because there was the lava flow I showed earlier going to Poa. So what I really wanted to talk about was spirituality. No, I'm not self-publishing already. No, that's some other guy. That's not me, but it's got my name, and it's just like a recent guy. And I'm like, what? But obviously, you can't publish science fiction or really any fiction if there's another guy publishing under your name. It's like the, you know, Hollywood actor thing. You got to choose. I'll have to be Tom Cruise or something. Choose a pen name. So that's pretty. It's just in a neighborhood I used to go visit. So it's something else. And there's Dog. Okay. All right. Well, that's my whole presentation, my preface presentation. So I was waiting for you to figure it out, Barklord. But switch the mute again because, and let's try here a bit because I had a thing where I was going to leave if in a half an hour if nobody showed up. You showed up. There you go.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Okay.
There you go. So how you doing?
I'm doing well. I have about 3 more days before I move to Mankato, Minnesota. Yeah, that's the Bark Lord's new address. Um, I'm excited about it. It's not the school that I originally wanted to go to, but I'm really excited about just tackling it. I've been procrastinating my education for 30 years. I just have to do it, and it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
I have to embrace it. It is what it is.
Well, it seems like, you already have been doing that, right? So you know what it's like to go
Yeah,
back
but it's different though, being graded on things and looking and being critiqued. It's different than my whole time on YouTube. I've just been zany and creative and just throwing things out there, but you
Yeah.
can't just get away with that. Luckily, well, that's why I want to do the creative writing thing because that's part of it. I can just go off in a tangent like that.
What do you mean? That's what you're going to study? Creative writing?
Well, I'm doing a philosophy major, but I'm going to have a creative writing minor. So
Cool.
yeah, I'll probably, and I get to do the Ireland trip next spring. That'll be really cool. I hope to meet some YouTubers over in the UK. If anybody hears this,
That'd be cool.
yeah, I'm going to do Queen's University in Belfast for a semester or two.
Oh, right. I remember you talking about me
Yeah,
doing
I'm
that. So
really
that's all
excited
happening.
about.
That's awesome.
Well, there's nothing stopping me. I met the criteria, so I'm happy about it.
That's great.
Talk
So
to you
how far
later.
is this move to Minnesota? I mean, you gotta,
No, it's only 90 minutes away.
so is it a move and truck situation or you don't even have
No,
to,
I,
or?
I took 3 carloads of my boxes of books and my clothes, and that's all I got, and a bunch of guitars and amps. That's what
Oh,
I.
cool.
But it's funny because I've been going through all my possessions again, again every time I move, and I came across this picture that I colored when I was 10 years old when my mother was she was having heart surgery for the first time in 1979. And I just can't part with it. It's just this thing I colored and I've kept all these years, but it's just useless. It's dragging me down with all like every time I move, I see it and I don't ever spend any time reminiscing about it or anything, but it's there. I can't seem to just
Right.
throw it in the trash. But I think, well, maybe I should pass this down to another person in the family.
Well, I always rented and I liked moving, keeping stuff. And then after, 25 years of it, it's like, no, I'm too much of a pack rat. And I'm
Right.
not nearly as much of a pack rat as somebody that got a house in their hometown at 30 and kept stuff. And that's why there's stuff for the Antique Roadshow. It's like, it's not a bad thing really, but when you're hauling it around, and there is something releasing to letting go of stuff, but
Sure.
frankly, it's also sort of the slave oppression of where, no, we should be able to keep a box of stuffed animals in an attic and just forget about it. I mean, ideally, but moving it around, yeah.
One of the things I can't part with is my own like notebooks from years and years ago. It's just some of the stuff I'm embarrassed to even read again, but I can't
Yeah.
at the same time. I
Well,
need.
that's what I have after shedding a lot of stuff because, a box or two worth of notebooks, or more like probably, yeah, 2 boxes spread out, through. Um, and yeah, there's so much partial stuff. It's not like worth saving because it's great, but I think yeah, no, it's one of my things I wouldn't give up either. So I still
Hey,
have them.
I always wondered, how do you feel? Where do you place yourself philosophically with respect to um, analytic philosophy and continental philosophy?
Well, that's sort of modernism then, like what postmodernism is a rejection of. Um, I don't know. It's funny. Well, like
I know you're an empiricist, essentially, right?
yes, and I mean, I think I'm pretty purely a skeptic in the Pyrrhonistic, non-academic school of skepticism sense. Like, as far as categorizing me, the thing is, so okay, let's put it this way, as a individual human being, I was all into, the thing as a teenager and 20s that I was rejecting was a lot of that philosophy that I was taught in a philosophy degree, and why it was mostly all insufficient and stuff. But in the long run, noticed that when I was young, I happened to go to a school that taught a lot based on Greek myths, and learning that classical education, I think it's a good thing, and maybe that's because it turned out that's the kind of education I had. So I sort of rejected it, but in the long run, I appreciated it. But really, I'm pretty much, I think, on a postmodern side, in the sense of there is no postmodern philosophy. It's just sort of a rejection of
Certainties.
of the modern version of analytics and continental philosophy. But continental philosophy, started all this. So it depends where the transition is. But, postmodern and modernism is that, like, we've argued about science before, and there's a similar argument about whether technological progress was going to solve everything, whether all the social problems could even be solved by just, there's one true thing and we're on the trail, we're going to find it, a rejection of that, and more, from the skeptical uncertainty and stuff. So, like, I found it hard to appreciate Kierkegaard enough because he was still Christian, but that was a good kind of poetic philosophy that attracted me. And then when you get to Nietzsche, who also I've learned has problems, of course, but is on the post having to believe in Christianity side. So even things like Kant, okay, that's quaint. You kind of reject it because, oh, that's something I liked when I was a kindergartner or whatever. And really, there's a lot more to it that I could appreciate as I grow older.
His justifications, his reasoning for all of his choices is very sophisticated, even if he comes to wrong conclusions. Yeah.
Right, and a lot of things about, a lot of things. His version, the categorical imperative, for example.
Going through his argument is very worthwhile.
Yeah, or a lot of these Ayn Randian type kids could go through his version of liberal ethics, which, being old, is still conservative and modern in the traditional sense. Like, you can learn from that and then move beyond it. But yeah, when you reject it, it's not like, oh, I was a Nazi and now I'm not. It's more like, oh, I thought things were this simple way and they're a little more complicated.
Right.
So, which is pretty good. So
that's what happened to me. I mean, I became Ayn Randian when I was 18, or probably it was probably only about a year, but it seemed like a long time to me. It was like a big impact on my life. But mostly, I think what I wanted was, I got from her like some kind of a rational justification for my atheism at the time, and I kind of knew that.
Right.
And she gave me the framework for that. And then I realized that, hey, I'm learning how to think, and then I got turned on to people like Robert Anton Wilson. And I just went in kind of zany land. I started listening to the Talking Heads, and I was liberated intellectually, artistically.
Right.
That's pretty much my path.
Interesting. Yeah, I love the Talking Heads.
1 second here.
I still like them. Hey, Kenneth.
Hey, what's up, Kiro? Yeah, I came across Ayn Rand a couple years ago, and it was like through her later stages of speeches and everything, where she started focusing in on government structured philosophy.
I think I escaped any Ayn Rand period by the fact that I became a Heinlein fan. And Heinlein, I noticed later on in life, there's a big overlap between this. He's a science fiction author, and
he had
Ayn Rand.
The Church of All Worlds based a religion off of his novel.
Really?
Yeah.
Which one?
It's yeah. They do the water sharing and all that. And they're basically neo-pagans, but.
And yet all his fiction, he's got a really good science fiction, I still think. I reread some lately. But it's also, he did a lot of pulp, where you just pump out books. And then he also has a lot of things that have become cliche, but he helped create them, like, the spunky pro-sex feminist sex goddess, you know, like Barbarella or whatever. And so it's also adolescent, but I think it's a much more healthy version of rugged individualism. You know, he does a lot of post-apocalyptic or lost on a planet kind of stuff, and it's really realistic politically, and there's a lot of actually deep ideas that he would, you know, shove in there. But and it's a funny thing too of whether it's pro or anti-feminist, which I still side with. It's pretty feminist. He did Potemkin of Mars, you know, pulp girl growing up on Mars, science fiction, kind of like a Nancy Drew.
Did you like the John Carter series?
What one is that? That sounds familiar. I don't know.
Carter on Mars, the Edgar Rice Burroughs stuff.
Oh no, I haven't read it. I knew I recognized the name though.
It's basically, you know, it's like space fantasies. Really
I've never read him much.
Yeah, he's the.
So I should. I'm reading so much now lately and buying books. I mean, I've been buying all these classic, reading every Philip K. Dick book I didn't get around to. So
oh really?
Wait, what is it again? Wait, John, what is it? Hughes? No, I know the name. Tell me again. John Carter is written by.
Oh, Edgar Rice Burroughs, isn't it?
Edgar Rice Burroughs. No, I'm trying. Yeah, no, I just slipped my mind.
Sorry,
I never read him, but of course, you know, it's classic. But I just happen to have never decided.
Well, I like he's kind of got that space fantasy thing happening before there was really a science fiction, and it's just kind of a cool. It seems like a hybrid.
Hey, let me see. I'm typing in some stuff here.
Anyway,
Edgar Rice Burroughs, not William S. Burroughs.
No, not William S. Burroughs.
That's what's happened. I confuse these guys my whole life. I'm 50, and I know Burroughs is also William Burroughs is like everybody says he's great, but it's super weird. Like I was sort of slow to even get into Philip K. Dick until my 30s because it was just I guess I liked more the art. I just reread the Foundation series, you know.
Oh, really?
But, yeah.
That's Asimov, though.
Ooh, it stands the test of time. It's pretty good, though. It's still funny. You know what? What? Go ahead.
Well, I read the original Foundation series, but then I read the what do they call it? Prequel or prelude or whatever, and
I don't remember.
It wasn't nearly as good. But
it was Asimov?
I know that there's more. There's more now, right?
But by Asimov, or you mean he let other people work in it?
Yeah, by Asimov, I thought.
Oh, no, I didn't know that. I got a box, or 2 boxes, I guess it was, of old science fiction from my uncle-in-law, who has a library he's been making for 30 years. So it was a bunch of old stuff, but good Ursula K. Le Guin, stuff I'd read and not.
See, I haven't read any of her stuff.
Yeah, and so the last thing I hadn't reread in there, well, and also a bunch of sort of junk stuff from like Arthur C. Clarke, and I was rereading Arthur C. Clarke, and I realized he's not as good an author as I thought. He's a really great, interesting guy with great ideas, but his writing is like a lot of his pulp is not worth reading. And then you read Rendezvous with Rama or Childhood's End, and
like his delivery isn't very good. His story.
Yeah, okay, or it's just arbitrary. He knows that you have to have somebody has cancer or whatever, you know, and it's just kind of, it's very, you could tell what he's a very hard sci-fi guy, and what he's really writing about is like, what would it be to be a submarine captain that herds whale? And then all of that is like, or for example, there was one thing, he's very liberal too. Like there's a lot, even in his 50s and 60s stuff for sure. Like, you know, just arbitrarily that there's bisexuality and a liberal society. And this guy lives on Titan and he comes back and it's all just kind of, you know,
like
like
was that way.
This guy, well, for example, in that story, it was sort of a boring, arbitrary story pieced together to write a book with. And yet he had like an iPhone in it. The guy had a communicator, and this is early 60s or late 50s. And he has a communicator. He lives in Titan, you know, on the moon of Titan. And he's used to being totally in touch with his family. And, he can't get to him. And then he goes to Earth. He still has the device, but it's light hours away or whatever it is, you know. And so he can't communicate with him instantly. And he's basically having social media withdrawal.
Oh, sure.
because he doesn't know anybody on Earth, so it does him almost no
He
good.
lost his cell phone. What is he
Yeah,
going to do?
and yet this is like before there was a cell phone or even a personal computer. He's so Arthur C. Clarke is like that, like his
Yeah.
little shitty
The
books
emotional
are full of,
attachment.
satellites and things.
He's exploring that. What is modern man going to be emotionally attached and dependent on?
Yeah,
When
but
you
his
lose
stuff
that.
before the '60s is like it wasn't as inspired. But anyway, so so I reread the Foundation. I just finished the Foundation, and it stood the test of time. You know, a weird thing about that is all of those guys, including these hard sci-fi guys like Asimov and Clarke, they all believed in telepathy.
Yeah.
All their books have at least a little bit of telepathy, or telepathy.
Maybe it's wishful thinking.
There are telepaths.
Well, it's interesting that a scientifically oriented mind would want to include that in the future, right?
Or just see it as totally a possibility that we just hadn't detected yet.
It's an optimistic view for sure.
Well, because doesn't the world seem like there's telepathy? So thinking that they'd figure out the radio wave or whatever, I think it makes sense.
Yeah. Or just being able to predict so statistically well that you know what's going to happen. You pretty much know what's going to happen.
Well, that made a huge impact on me when I was young, and so it was interesting rereading it because that's what the Foundation's about. And as a kid, I remember it as a way more elaborate theory, right? And of course, you read the books,
but they never
and it's just
explain
like,
it.
no. But they explain it just enough. It doesn't take more than, it's just like a particle. You can't predict where the particle goes, but give me 1,000,000 of them. I'll calculate their temperature and what the pressure is going to be and everything else that you really, and it sort of makes sense. And then I'd forgotten that he ends it, spoiler, he ends it with a mutant that has basically a telepathic ability, which is a weird way to play with your own story, but in narrative wise, it was perfect. Where a mutant that gets a like an ability that is latent in humans, but we don't have it, to like pin other people's emotions, so he can convert you into a follower, right? And so they couldn't predict that, so he still resorted on. Individuals don't matter. It matters to the individuals. But then, actually, there's an exception to this rule where, the individual can matter and change history. Yeah, it's
your own behavior is not completely determined.
Well, no, that's the thing about the quantum mechanic interpretation. The part that I believe that is less open is that, you can't determine an individual path. But because of the probabilities, you got statistics where, give them 1 billion. Or in that book, one thing I hadn't remembered, but he says really clearly, is that you basically need at least a planet's worth of people to do this, right? So it's like it wouldn't even work on a single planet with races and nationalities and philosophies and ideologies. You actually need a whole galaxy worth for the math to play out right, because it actually is that this planet might not go that way, but you need 5 other planets. One of them is, So, but doesn't really.
Isn't it a problem too for like data gathering to know the position and the trajectory of every single molecule? You just can't do it all at the same time simultaneously, right? So I mean, if you're taking data from different times, none of it could possibly be used to predict the future accurately or perfectly.
Well, or also just in his basic idea where individuals are like particles or something, and statistically, he didn't take into it. It's a very old, modern, not postmodern view, right? Because he didn't take chaos theory into account, where with pure deterministic mathematics, there are systems, data transformations, where you can't predict what it's going to be in the future other than by doing all the calculations to get to the future, right? It's complex. Like with complexity theory, there are things where, like you can predict the 1,000th prime number. I don't need to check all the ones in between. I can go straight there. But you can't predict the 1,000th digit of pi. you have to calculate out and take all the time to calculate every number in between to get out there. And so and so the whole idea that you could have I still love the idea of this, what do you call it? Psychohistory. And it was like just psychology. This is how mathematical psychology.
It was
I love that idea.
It was a reverse engineering, right? It was like reverse engineering the history in order to predict the future.
Well, right. Yeah. But I mean, he doesn't even explain it that much, but yes, that's what they would have done. But basically they had all these complex, like quantum mechanical level of complexity. Not that it had anything to do with that really. But, tensors and complex, physics level mathematics. And you could calculate things that would happen on the broad scale. Like that the empire was going to fall, and that and also intervene if he did this and that, then there would be a 98% chance that it was still working, and it would all be by probabilities. But again, the chaos theory, and not even that, but just simple complexity theory, shows that the way the unpredictable things build up over time, you're severely limited in your ability to predict the next number. You can't predict who's going to win at the craps table.
Stizer, how are you?
Hello.
Hey, Stizer.
Yes, I was just listening.
All right.
There was a weird thing. I was listening to some fucking weird scientist dude in some documentary, and he's like, "Yeah, you know what? The universe is so batshit crazy, it shouldn't even exist." And I was like, "Yep, that sounds about right." Because they were working out why is it's some fucking mad thing, the universe is so in balance that shouldn't be happening, but it is clearly because we're here. But they were saying there's something wrong with our math, because our math's saying one thing and the universe exists, which is fucking weird. So I'm a dualist, by the way. I believe in both, because of that reason, I guess. I know determinism works clearly, but also the idea of choice, or the free will part, that's just us choosing we're enabled not to choose, which is a bit of a problem. We have to.
Hey, it would be good to get your opinion, Stizer, on all the hoopla here in the United States about our stupid kneeling before football games for the national anthem. How does that look to you guys over there?
Well, we play football all the time, as you know.
Sure.
We love our footy. We never play a national anthem before the football game. We just fucking start the football. We normally play actually songs, because we football fans like to chant songs. So normally you have songs or people start chanting, but it's normally just normal music that the fans associate with their club. We don't play the national anthem. That just seems over the top patriotic. So I don't know. But I think in the sense of the ability to kneel and stuff.
Does it seem dangerous? Does it seem dangerous to you? Politically dangerous?
Yeah, because it's like a form of weird fascism.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's I get people are patriotic, sure. I mean, I don't mind if it was the World Cup.
But they're putting the symbol above the intention. And what I find most disturbing about it is that there was a huge movement to discredit and sort of mischaracterize his intention by saying that he was trying to be anti-military. In his very first interview he gave, he said nothing of that. He was interested in serving the people who are not being served justice by police and stuff like that. So, but he actually acknowledged the military because he has family that's in the military, and he to it.
It's peaceful protest. They did that.
It is a peaceful protest. People are choosing to be butthurt about it, and it's just weird. It's really weird.
I mean, but it's scary because.
Well, I thought you were talking about something else. Are you talking about the NFL?
Yeah. I mean,
well, yeah, it's the most respectful. It's practically serene. You couldn't get a more respectful way of doing a protest than kneeling with your hands still across your chest towards the flag.
The very first interview he gave, he explained exactly what he meant, and they're trying to mischaracterize it to make him unpopular enough to get their way.
And the other thing is, like, he's not a big spokesman like that. He could get up in a mic and use words to do that. He just is playing a game, and that's his contribution.
Yeah.
And yet he wouldn't be scared off of doing it, which shows character. And I mean, you couldn't get more respectful. I mean, really, if he was protesting, if some conservative dude was doing something like that to protest,
Yeah.
I might think, oh, that's silly. Who cares about Benghazi? But I certainly wouldn't feel like he's trying to trash the country and say he wants our soldiers to die. It's fucking ridiculous.
Right. They're mischaracterizing the intent.
Because the NFL is one of the biggest recruiters for the military, you know.
No, that's true.
Well, that's why they started doing that. No, the reason they were out there with the anthem was something I forget the details, but it was a thing that the Army paid for, which is actually fine. But you see why it's not fine when it comes to this sort of shit.
Yes, it becomes a wing of the government propaganda then.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is, and that's why it's scary, because that's how you get fascism, man. You know.
But plus, they're stupid, because what is an NFL player that wants to do something about this but doesn't want to lose his job? Well, some of them will go, I'll try it. I'm in New York. I'll go ahead and try it. The team says they'll pay my fine. But also, they just start going on The View and saying way more outrageous things that are outside that is really hard to fire them for when you got half the country supporting them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but they're not trying to be ridiculous. They're trying to be respectful. And that's what's so disappointing about this. As a matter of fact, I have friends that in the military now that are just posting continuously on Facebook about how they, they feel personally insulted by this. And I'm like, really? I mean, his very first interview that he gave, he said he doesn't mean any disrespect to the military. He wants the military to get what they have paid for with their lives, and that means, a just society for everyone.
Well, look at what Malcolm
That's exactly what he's saying, that he's protesting for the intent of the flag, not the symbol of the flag.
Yeah. Well, because it represents exactly what he's doing, free speech. It's like he's allowed to do that shit, isn't he? In fucking America. It's
but that's
another more direct than that. It wasn't like, hey, here, I'm doing this for free speech. It's like, I'm using my free speech.
Yeah, exactly, right? And it's like, that's so weird. It's not even like this is new. They did it at the Olympic Games.
One guy that I talked to
said at the Olympic Games with the black glove. I mean, it's it's not new. It's just because the fucking media.
Well, that's the thing that's funny too, is because I think it's a good place. I think if sports is cultural, it's a great place for us to discuss whether it's okay to have an afro or not at work.
They want a comfy, safe space where they don't have
really
to build issues.
Well, that's what's becoming clear, is the whole alt-right and anything light alt or any alt-light, all of those. Is that they're jealous of this SJW type that that they talk about. They're jealous. They want a safe space. They want to be validated for being who they are. They want these things they think other people are getting by complaining about it. And they slowly are starting to realize it. But also, I've been following them a little bit, like Andy Worski and these things, and they are splitting up crack by division between the one and the other. In the internet blood sports, if you watched any of that, these guys, it's dividing quickly between them. I mean, their coalition status is over, and they're on the refracturing. Not that they're going to go away, but they're fracturing, and the one hates the other, and the one, the alt-right is saying, but he's a Jew, and it's all, so it's a short-lived thing as usual. But yeah. So I had a depressing thing on the whole race thing, which is I still don't believe it, trust it. I think I'm going to do 23andMe, but I did my ancestry.com. Now, the family story is my grandmother is half Cherokee. So my mom was a quarter and I'm an eighth. No, she was her grandmother was, so I was supposed to be a 16th Cherokee and then an 8th Hawaiian. Now I knew they would be less than that because my grandmother my great grandmother that was full Hawaiian, I never knew her. And, I figured she could easily have been half Hawaiian or whatever, to blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So, but I expected to be, like 1/16 and 1/8, these are big numbers. These are 10. And I figure, okay, it'll be half. So I figured 5% Cherokee, 10% Hawaiian, something like that. And no, it came back, and there's a little tiny Micronesian, which is everybody down there in the Australian. So that's my Polynesian, but less than 1%, and no Cherokee whatsoever. And I swear to God, my grandmother, I looked at an old Cherokee portraits. Some guy went out there like they used to in the 1800s and drew all these, like they would people and birds and animals, and they drew all these faces, and the old ladies looked just like my grandmother. None, no Native American whatsoever.
Well,
95% UK, 2% European Jew.
Because I was going to say, you'd be surprised when you go into your DNA and find, oh, I knew some girl, right? And she was she used to be, and this is the funniest thing, right? She used to be a race realist, right? Like race realist, white as fuck race realist. Turns out she's got a black dad or some weird shit, and I was like, lol. And she just literally had to change her entire outlook on what she thought race was, because I was like, it's crazy.
I thought everybody was a mutt, especially in the United States, but to a degree, Europe and everywhere that's had travel for 200s or 500s of year, but I've been running into a lot of people that are coming back 98%, 95%. It's like, okay. But I had the opposite of like the white nationalist KKK guy that finds out. I thought I had some, I used to think about it this way, which I still do, but like you have 16 ancestors. It gets really interesting at that level. There's 16 of your ancestors of their same generation, at a dinner party. And supposedly 2 of mine were Hawaiians and 1 of them was Cherokee. And it's like, no.
No.
2 of them said that they had, they're all white as fuck.
Yeah. But the thing is, right, and this is the weirdest part, is even
still Europe mix though. But
even when you do that, I was going to say, even when you do that, Europeans are totally mixed as well. Don't forget, we had the fucking Romans fucking banging everybody.
Right.
We had before them,
my UK
banging everybody.
Yeah, they called it UK because I've got English. Like my grandmother did genealogy, and we go down to wherever Sherwood Forest is by, and then there's some Scottish, and that's my Allen name, I guess, which I never knew until recently. So yeah, it's pretty mixed there, though mostly UK mix, like not much Europe. There was with the 2% Jewish is what comes from Germany and France, and just some random amount of people 4 or 5 generations back, right?
But that's what I'm saying. Like Europe's like a little mad mini melting pot, and then that's been for centuries. You know what I mean? It's like in England, like the United Kingdom. Has been fucked by like the fucking Danish fucking invaded us, fucking French invaded us, and then we invaded them, and they invaded us. The Romans took over. We had the Celts.
Yeah.
We had the Moors who came up from Spain. So
well, it's like pre-America, right? It's the slow motion version, and I think was the advantage. That's the advantage that those societies had. It's this mixed advantage, and you do have conflict, but that's also where rich culture comes from. That's my theory.
It
happened slow-mo in Europe for 1,000 years.
Yeah, it did, and this thing, it took so long. And people forget that America is like a brand spanking new country in regards of history. It's brand new. 200 years ain't that long. I can go to a university that's older than America. You know what I mean? By a couple of 100 years. So
longer than that.
Yeah. So America's like fucking. It's doing okay considering how fucking young it is, though. To be fair, I mean,
I have a story. I have a quick story that relates to the UK. So when I was like 18, I was working at NASA. I worked for this great astronomer, Helen Walker, and I was helping with this convention they were having at Santa Cruz University in California, which is really old for the United States because the Spanish had it before it was even part of the US. So it's like 1500s. And I'm like, wow, we're walking through the campus and I see the monument. This was from the 1600s, and she's like, she went to Oxford, and she's like, my university was over 1,000 years old.
Yep.
Right.
And I had no idea, and I was a well-educated, college kid, and I was like, it hadn't occurred to me that Oxford was actually, and there's, that old. So
it's
Hey, Dyson,
yeah.
have you ever been to Northern Ireland?
No, but it's close because I live like right next to it.
Like how far?
I can get a ferry there if I want to. It's like literally like right over the water.
Like a couple hours away?
It's like an hour, if that.
Yeah. Cool.
But it's a nice place. A bit mental because they are mental over there in Ireland.
Mental, yeah.
Yeah, well, they're all religious, so they are mental, in my opinion. But you know what? A good news story come out of Ireland the other day, which is that they just changed the abortion laws in their constitution.
Yep.
That is.
Yep, they did.
Oh, did it? I heard that I didn't hear that was the end result.
Yeah, that they overwhelmingly it was like 68.9. It was fucking a mad number. So basically, like everybody in England, or the UK, I should say, is like, yeah, Ireland's backwards because they're under the thumb of the Pope. They're all Catholics and shit, and they're like reading the Bibles and shit. And they went, nah, not anymore. And it's weird because Northern Ireland is a part of the United Kingdom, right?
More women are voting.
They've got now, which shouldn't.
Yes.
They should need to change the law now because this can't happen. They've got stricter laws now in Northern Ireland, which is technically Britain, than they do in the South, which used to be like the maddest place.
Well, because one of the things they were saying in their campaign I read was, hey, Irish women are already getting abortions and they just have to travel, and it was European Union and you could go to Northern Ireland. So let's just face it, instead of making this emigre thing.
No, they couldn't go to Northern Ireland. No, they had to come to the United Kingdom.
Oh, really?
England. Yeah.
But they could, with the European Union, I assume they could just go to France or wherever.
No, but it's easier to get to England than it is to get to
Sure. Yeah, no. But I mean, the point is, they were just saying, look, they're doing it anyway.
Yeah.
So what's the point? Exactly, and that's the thing. Like,
you don't want to criminalize people.
It's a woman's choice, anyways. Like,
well, and it's a modern nation, but you probably have a lot of Catholics down there in power because of how they had the whole, the whole
Pope thing.
The whole conflict has just empowered the fundamentalist Catholics, like historically. So I mean, they still have a. Well, and also, not to say that it's that way, but I guess the Irish are still Catholic enough that they're like, oh, I don't know if it should be legal.
Right? No, well, actually, there's a lot of people who are like, but the vast majority, and this is the thing that I like, it wasn't like just by a little bit, because that can be then contentious bit like Brexit, because Brexit was pretty close, so everyone's whining at everybody else about Brexit. But that was like, no, we're doing it kind of thing. It's like everybody vote. There was only one county that voted against it. All the rest voted for it.
Wait, remind me, did you support the Brexit?
Yep.
And so do you think that's going to go through? I remember we talked about this maybe a year ago or something right after.
I've got no idea. Our government's so stupid and retarded. I've got no idea.
Well, do you think it absolutely should go through, or can't there be a continuing thought process where, they shouldn't do any shifty stuff, but if it's rethought, I mean, it's not impossible to rethink these things. Maybe it should have to go back to a referendum, but a second referendum isn't necessarily injustice.
I don't want another referendum because that's not on. But what I would say, I want us to leave the EU because I don't think trading blocks works. I don't like them. I don't like them. I think they're economically flawed. That's why I don't like them. And it leads to people getting way too much fucking power.
Which would you want? Because there's these other ideas is that, well, what they want now is just the trading part, but not people moving back and forth. An alternate would be no trading block. We're going to make our own environmental and, safety regulations, but people can go back and forth. That's the one I would support. I'd say, like, let the governments decide, here's the regulations or how you make glue in our country, but let people go back and forth.
Well, the thing is, the people thing is a red herring, I think. The reason why it's a red herring is because
feel that way.
Because the people who come here pay more tax than the average person who grew up here. Right? They have to pay.
But don't you want to be able to go to France and juggle in the street or whatever, or DJ without any bullshit? Isn't that better?
No, but the thing is, right, and this is the point is, we still can do that, but I just have to apply in a slightly different
You
way.
have to get a
and just get a
visa.
visa. Yeah,
little
but I still have to get a
visa.
visa. Hey,
Well, that's a good
I have to
point. That's a good point. So you can still do the international DJ
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah. Because the thing is,
but some guy can't go work in a factory if the wages are twice as much.
How difficult is it to work in?
You can't leave
country?
Romania and go work in UK.
Not anymore. No, not when we live now. Well, the thing is, it's.
I hadn't thought about that, but the gig economy is fine. You can totally gig in Europe because you're doing it one shot and it's just a regular, cheap, easy visa.
Well, if you got Facebook or Twitter, they've changed the terms and conditions. They had to, because the EU's just passed this mad fucking law where basically they demand to see what the fuck these tech companies are up to when it comes to data. So they've had to literally tell you what they're up to. A big fucking page that to read on Twitter and a big fucking page that to read on Facebook. Like, this is what we're going to do, blah, 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 blah. And that was the EU, because the EU are not fucking around when it comes to these fucking tech companies because of all the shit being passed to these mad third parties, and they're using it to basically propagandize politics.
You know what? They might actually not let you go gig in Europe and make it hard to get those weekend celebrity visas.
There's a fuck ton of Brits who live in Europe right now. I mean, at the first point, it was like,
but you can't be sure they won't punish those guys. That's who gets punished sometimes.
They've already offered British people the opportunity to have an EU passport, which is weird.
Yeah. I didn't hear that yet. I haven't been following it that close lately.
Yeah, because they already know. I mean, we give the EU around 10 billion quid a year, something like that.
But if they give the UK, like, they have a lot of reason to give the UK a sweetheart deal because it's a big economy. And yet if they do that, then they're going to kill themselves with all the other countries that are going to want out. Well, that can't get sweetheart deals.
Well, the only two countries with nukes.
On the other hand, the EU governing body is such a scumbag organization. It's hard not to just wish for them to have a bad time.
Yeah, it's shit.
But it shouldn't be. And no, the thing is, holding on to it is then you get these organizations and then you reform them. And, otherwise, what are you going to do?
Dude, I remember growing up, right? And all you ever heard on the news was farmers subsidies. It was just, we always argue with the EU. We always did. We always have. Because we're not like, this is the funny thing, Britain is not like continental Europe. We're completely different. We got a fucking queen, for fuck's sake. She's still relative.
But all the countries on continental Europe are just as different, is the thing. But the thing is, they like blew it not making the EU governing body genuinely democratic. Like, what were they thinking? And they shouldn't get away with that.
Get onto this. If you know how old our parliament is, right? People call it the mother of parliaments and shit, right? Or the father of parliaments, whatever. But the fact is, the way
bunch of powder wig pansies. Yeah, I heard of them.
The way the EU is set up is the opposite to Britain's, and that just doesn't make any sense. Our House of Lords, which is the second chamber, that's not elected; it's peerage or whatever, or appointed. That can still be overruled by the House of Commons, right? The House of Commons can be like, yeah, okay, fine, whatever, we'll ignore you anyway. Because they passed the Parliament Act, right? But in the EU, it's the unelected officials who make the laws, and like the fucking House of Commons, inverted commas, basically amend the laws, and they can just ignore them anyway.
Yeah, and a advisory body to somebody that doesn't respect them at all.
Yeah, because they're not elected, they're appointed.
You know what's funny? So do you ever notice, you probably noticed this, but so our Senate is modeled on this House of Lords style, but back when they had the veto, right? The original idea of the rich people running the common people is you let the common people go ahead and vote, but then you have the Electoral College, or you have the House with the common people, and then you have the Senate that can do the 2/3.
Where do you think it comes from? It comes from Greece, for fuck's sake.
But you guys weakened your Senate, and it's almost like you wouldn't be that bad off if the House of Lords had more power. It wouldn't necessarily be that bad. I mean, all those guys are educated, and eventually they're not all, you know, like,
well, the thing
I
is,
hate
In order
the
to
poor
be in the
people,
Senate,
you know.
you had to
but
be
the
a
thing is,
property owner
Right.
too.
but
So
it
the
pisses-
Senate,
it
I
pisses
love our
off.
status right now. The Senate is a bastion of where conservatism means things, at least they change slow and are predictable, and you know what you're dealing with for more than a while, you know. But yeah, no, the EU, there is no democracy, because you get to elect people that get to talk in public, and
And
they
don't
all
talk
get
shit.
crazy brains like Nigel Farage, because they have no power, so they're just talkers, right? So the extreme guys that talk funnest to watch, click like, you know, get power, but they don't actually have power, and then it becomes dangerous. While these technocrats who are like 50% technocrat, like, no, I went and studied how this stuff works, and 50%, we got to keep giving money to the rich. Yeah. So no wonder there's a rejection of it. But it, on the other hand, the part of it is that it's a unification where, you know, we didn't have war in Europe, right? That's
Well,
what the whole trend that went to the EU was like, we're not going to have war in Europe again and again and again like the last 1,000 years, right? And
well,
that's
I
pretty
mean,
amazing.
that's true. That I mean, I
What if
don't
you have
think
war again in Europe because of the breakup? That would be unfortunate.
Nah, that's not going to happen. No, I
Well,
don't think
Russia's in
anyone.
there still, and there's definitely tension still.
Russia still makes more sense than the United States right now.
Or you have a right-wing Italy
Even Russia.
again or something. You guys have these right-wingers
No,
that
they're there. They're there.
keep getting in
scariest
power.
the scariest part is the rise of the Nazi party in Germany. That's a bit spooky because they're
Well,
getting
yeah,
popular
except
again.
for if they're too affiliated with that, that's almost there's an immunization. What if they're not called the Nazis? There's the Blue Blangs or some new kind of freedom and love party. You know, you can't trust
Well,
any of
they're
these
not called
ideologue populist movements are dangerous, really.
Well, I mean, to be fair, the one I support is I wouldn't call man populist, but I would say that the movement that I kind of affiliate myself to is economic justice, so to speak. And I want rich people to pay more tax. I mean, that's my simple point. When I was growing up, rich people were
Yeah.
rich. Now they're just stupidly fucking rich.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
gotten
you
ridiculous.
can't even.
You know, Kirill, I'm starting to come around to your Henry George position a little bit
Oh,
more.
cool. Because I've also been moderating that it's not
Yeah.
the whole answer. He was still in work in progress.
Well,
But tell me about it.
Yeah, but he does have a lot, because taking away ownership of land and the means of production does do a lot. But I still have issues with predicating social authority on market ideology. It's really it's a hit or miss. It's really inconsistent to do that, because market ideology does not promote meritocracy or anything like that.
You mean the fact that he's actually still quite pro-capitalist?
Yes.
He's like, fuck the landlord, the rent's too high, the government should take that part over.
I'm
But
not
it would actually
completely against.
promote the capitalist growth and capitalist ideas, and people would end up ruining land because they weren't careful with it, and et cetera. It would.
Yeah.
There's a danger to it. You mean
Capitalism will.
because I see that.
Capitalism is
Yeah.
going to eat itself, and we can't allow to have this.
It creates too many social conflicts of
Yeah,
interest.
it
It's not helping.
it doesn't provide anything. We need a smarter version of socialism. That's
No,
what-
but he's right that the progressive tax could be on land. And you could not have,
It's true.
you might still want a sales tax. You might want tariffs. These are little tokens of things. But in terms of a major tax,
That's where you source the higher taxes from. Yep.
yeah.
assets.
And the thing is, he's right about the fact, like
They're
a lot of people have argued back, oh, well, then they just leave New York. Well, yeah, some of them would, and good for them. They'd go make their ranch out and make their headquarters out in Nebraska. It would help Nebraska. But you can't tell me that a lot of these people still wouldn't be like Trump, want to deal in the big, expensive real estate, and they just pay those taxes, and that would pay for
Schools, hospitals, fucking
yeah,
everything.
and the abandoned buildings would be taken over by the government, and a non-for-profit would lease them for the land price because the building had been, basically abandoned. But there's so many empty buildings in New York when you walk around New York. Those people would not pay the land tax. They would go back. The people that love the city would grab them, and you'd have public housing in these old
Well,
brick buildings.
here's another angle on that same thing. If you think that George is Henry George, right? If that's the progressive model for what we should be looking at, don't you think we should also do things like include permaculture type stuff, like perma design in public school? That has to be part of the deal. Because
schools should be free.
Kids need to learn how to actually live in a future where they're not completely just dependent on economy, like a market.
Like make schools little mini model societies where the kids can have a little factory place.
They can learn how to make houses themselves.
Yeah, and it used to be that way when everything was funded. You had the art area and the
doesn't mean we have to give up the internet or anything like that. We just move in a different direction.
Yeah, because
totally.
the thing with education as well is we don't teach our kids critical thinking either. We teach them what to.
Yes.
Well, I'm wondering if we don't need to just dissolve the schools and you have internet and tutor-based learning.
Hold on, best schools
have always been bad sociology.
Best school system in the world is in fucking Norway. You know, kids don't even have fucking homework.
I'll bet even if they're really civilized, schools are like, let's train our kids by putting them into Lord of the Flies.
And they don't have tests or anything. They just
even if they're not violent and like by American and Liverpool standards, there's no bullies. There's still bullies, right? Some passive aggressive or something. You know, it's just Lord of the Flies. Kids should not run their own society. They should be isolated among adults that train them until they're about 30, okay, or 15.
No, that was 30 sounds about good. 30 sounds okay with me.
Yeah. Well, if you're old enough, be 30.
The situation of that novel, too, Lord of the Flies, is not a normal situation for any group of people to suddenly be thrust into. That's not will inherit culture to live together or anything like that. It's not a fair situation to those individuals.
Yeah, but they were all of these English boys that had been trained in proper civilization, and the point was that the context defines the civilization, and also that kids are ruthless.
Yeah, well, human beings are ruthless in general.
If you take away the way that they know how to live, because they're disconnected from the land. They're thrown into a different land where they don't know how to live, and they have their intellectual tools are not.
And emotionally, they're susceptible to the kid that doesn't matter or that's excited about it, the kind of kid that would handle it.
But you know, it's interesting. There's a situation where Piggy demands his glasses back, and one of my ethics teachers, she said something about how she wanted us to think about how, in a Nietzschean sense, whoever was the character who was trying to lead this schism away from the group, he was a representative of the Nietzschean will to power situation. And I kind of took exception to that. I don't think that he was necessarily representative of Nietzsche. But what I thought was interesting is that they didn't seem to think that they could possibly share Piggy's glasses. It was either one group had it or he got to have them all the time. And that didn't need to be the case. When they needed his glasses, gave him the glasses, but when they didn't need the glasses, he could have his glasses back so he could see what he was doing. But he made that an issue in the book that it's either one or the other. And that's not necessarily the case in reality. There were some dichotomies there that I thought it was not a fair shake of a story. It wasn't representative of reality. I'll say that.
That's interesting, but I don't remember the way the plot went out enough to comment on the specifics of that. But on the part of
it took his glasses.
Being a Nietzschean thing is very interesting because, okay, I was a total devotee of Nietzsche, but then I found myself like trying to defend him on his comments on women, which I could still explain an apologia about. But also Nietzsche says, look, everything I've written, I'm on a staircase to somewhere further. and no teacher's happy until his student surpasses him. And so I felt also Nietzsche was telling me, it's like, look, I put a lot of this bullshit in here so that you wouldn't get it wrong, that this is my philosophy and you better not try to have it. Like, there really couldn't be a genuine cult of Nietzsche, where I think he even planted as part of a gimmick,
like what happened with
not
Ayn
like
Rand.
not like he's a god, but like a gimmick where he planted these contradictions of here. And so he really just gives you these tools of analysis you're supposed to use on your own, though, you know, some of the stuff I agree. But where I still am an apologia for him is, I think his will to power, and there's plenty of examples, and when he's praising the Jewish people and stuff, where the will to power is the will of the slave to say, fuck you, I'm not a slave. Oh, I'm powerless. Oh, I gotta lie to you, or this or that. Yeah. And I might fight, or maybe I won't, and I'll just enjoy pottery. I'm not a slave. You know, that's the will to power, more than I'm going to be the and the same thing with Darwin. I don't think Darwin, he noticed something, and the fittest is not the most savage. Sometimes it's more often subtle. It's why the fittest.
Butterflies are the most fit form for their survival.
Right, like a butterfly, exactly. Yeah, that's funny you should say that. I just said butterfly at the same moment.
There are plenty of examples of symbiosis, and like, have you ever seen that video?
Moss, all the subtle edges where there's a little niche.
The gorilla plucks that injured bird out of the water, just so gentle, and on the grass. It's interesting that a big gorilla would even bother.
Yeah.
Why would it do that? It wants to kind of help out. It doesn't have anything.
Well, I mean, I think animals show a lot of philosophic stuff, basically in the in-between time, when you got enough protein already that day. I think all the mammals, at least, and frankly, I could see it in all animals, this kind of a contemplative thing where, you know, and kindness or even arbitrary cruelty is a symmetric thing on the other side of stuff. But yeah, no, I haven't seen that one. That sounds great though. But
how did we even get on that topic? That was weird.
You just opened
various
your mouth.
ways.
You just open your mouth, mate.
Okay, so I got to tell you about my friend. Can I tell you about my friend that died?
Sure.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
That's just depressing.
No, okay, but he wasn't a depressing soul though. He was amazing. Funny. He was sort of a Doctor Who kind of guy, and he had a degree in Russian from McAllister, and then he got a degree in library science from I think Milwaukee, and he started teaching like basic programming and stuff at community colleges, but he also had some IT jobs, and he was doing so great. Do the funniest shit. We'd walk across the Twin Cities in the wintertime, just, you know, kind of on a drunk, but sometimes we'd go for like a 40-minute walk across the two cities. And
like when you were how old?
Oh, mid-20s, you know, mid to late 20s. But anyway, he one night we were at Stubb and Herb's in Minneapolis, down by the University of Minnesota where he lived, and he swore he was going to marry the next woman that dated. So then he moved to Chicago and was staying with a friend. And while he was down there, I visited him maybe 6 or 8 months later, and his longtime friend that he was living with had a freezer full of psilocybin mushrooms, a big bag full of mushrooms. So I went to visit Dan, and she was gone, and he said, let's just eat all those mushrooms. So we split this huge bag of mushrooms, and we had been drinking beer, and then we went walking around in Chicago. And everything was fine, but we were just one with the Chicago.
One with the mushrooms.
It was amazing, but I feel like I need to memorialize my friend Dan, because I've spent 11 years on YouTube and I've never really talked about him. But holy shit, in about I think 1999 or 2000, he ended up marrying that very next woman that he dated. And she was the worst possible person he could have ever chosen to marry. Just absolute.
Well, that kind of implies that, yeah, he did his plan and the plan worked. And hey,
It was terrible.
choosing what you want, figuring out a
was-
formula to get what you want doesn't necessarily get you what you really should have wanted.
Yep. Well, then he got diagnosed
I went through that
with
basically.
chronic leukemia at the same time. So he had this double whammy at the same time in his life. He had chronic leukemia, and it was $5,000 a month for medication, and he was going through the divorce from hell. And so for the last 15 years, he dealt with that, and he lived about 8 years longer than they expected him to live. But they found him like a week after he was dead, and it was just awful. They couldn't even. I feel so bad because I was the last person to talk to him, and that puts him on the same wavelength as my other friend Andy, who died when I dropped out of YouTube for a long time. She when I was talking to her on the phone, but my friend Dan died and I was like the last person to talk to him. He died like the next day on my birthday, or maybe 2 days later. If it was my birthday, it would have been a couple days later, but they don't know because his body was decomposed. And
Okay, I'm depressed now. Can you stop talking about
it was amazing. He never once complained. When my sister was killed by her husband and then he committed suicide, Dan called me every day for about 10 days to make sure that I was okay. And he never once told me. He was actually worried about himself because he was having seizures. He had a seizure at Walmart one time and had to go to the hospital. But that was a sudden thing. So, I mean, all this sounds really terrible, but he was very.
So these are in the last year.
He was very upbeat his whole life.
These are both in the last year or two.
What?
These both experiences in the last year or two.
Yeah.
Man, I really feel for everybody. What an impact that's. Yeah. Well, I mean, the gruesome details of the final moments or when you get found and stuff is really, it doesn't really add up to any much, really. But yeah, it's funny to be, but to be the last person just means that you were in contact with them in their life, right? It's just this.
Yeah. I found some video footage of him and also of his ex-wife, and I'm going to make copies and send them out to his brothers and sisters and stuff because a lot of them only have still photographs, but we actually have this kind of artistic thing from the late 90s that he wanted to do with another friend, and it was very unstructured and never really amounted to anything as far as a story, but it's very good footage of him just being creative and talking and having conversation. It's good at seeing him before he got sick, before he got married, everything like that.
Wait, what was he sick with again?
Chronic leukemia, or what do they call it? Chronic myelotic leukemia.
Does that mean it? So that's cancer, but it just stays in the blood, right?
Yeah, and then the medication has gotten a lot better in the last 10 years or 15 years.
Does not come from the marrow.
Possible that he could live a couple more decades, but
no, isn't leukemia. It doesn't.
Cancer of the white blood cells. Yep.
Yeah, but your cells are made from the marrow in your blood, right?
Right. And one of his sisters was a perfect match for a donor, but the medication was working so well that he kind of postponed that because it's kind of risky to have the transplant.
That's shit, though. I suffer from a blood disease as well. Not like leukemia or anything. I make too many red blood cells, so my blood clots really easy. Which is a bit weird.
What is that called?
It's called fucking painful. They've had to chop open my legs twice and my stomach. Because
you get clots too easy?
Yeah, I get blood clots. They got me on some fucking mad medication to stop it.
All right.
But yeah, I mean the first time it happened though, fucking hell, it was painful as fuck, man. It's not even painful. It at the point of your body when you get a blood clot, you just see flashing colors and shit. because it's just it goes past.
Because your blood vessel got blocked, but not in a way that would cause a heart attack, but just you actually had the pain of the pressure building up
Yeah.
blood.
No, it literally, my legs literally, I couldn't feel my legs. Like I went to get up to take a piss, and I couldn't literally get off the toilet because I was like, oh, my fucking legs don't work anymore.
And that's because the blood was backing up in your leg.
Yeah, it was literally like in me groin.
But doesn't that stresses your heart? But your heart's strong enough, and it just went.
Oh,
Okay,
shit.
we'll just fuck his legs over.
It's just
Hey, pain receptors.
It's the most insane. Like I said, it's not even a pain at that point. It's like being ran over by a steamroller while having pins and needles at the same time. You've had pins and needles and your arm feels a bit weird and dead and shit, and it's that's what you feel when you get a blood clot, and it's
because that's from that. I cross my legs and get that, and I try to remember to keep my legs down.
Don't, dude, because if that stays there, you're fucked, because that's a blood clot, basically, because it just doesn't go away, and it's the weirdest sensation ever, and there's no drug that stops it. I literally fucking had a fuck ton of morphine, and it was still there, shining brightly. The only way to stop that pain,
I've heard that.
Chop you open.
I've heard that there's some pain that even the morphine won't do.
Nah.
So hey, I have a question for Barklord and Stizer. Maybe you'll have an opinion, probably a negative one about this, but I've been trying, and I noticed as I've watched some old videos, I've been going over it the whole time, and really never any traction. But so, I mean, Barklord, do you get my idea? Which I just asked because I presented it, but I realize it's confusing the way I do it or whatever. So no harm if you don't. But like on spirituality, I mean, do you think you could guess or know my basic outlook on, because I bring it up and yet I'm an atheist and no metaphysics? Or maybe do you think I do have metaphysics, or do you have any idea? And if not, I'd still have a question about.
I think you are spiritual. There's nothing wrong with being.
Yeah, I don't have an allergic reaction to that word at all either.
No. I'm more like religious. That triggers me. Spiritual doesn't, because I think spiritual. Like I would class myself as spiritual. I don't believe in God, but I would class myself as spiritual because I love the universe. I love its madness. I love its mystery.
Isn't it that you don't want to give up that sense of sanctity?
Well, I wouldn't even use the word sanctity.
In God, a creator God or anything, or somebody that's responding to your prayers or anything, but you want to hold on to a sense that there's a sanctity to it, because there's something valuable about having a sanctified life, maybe that, or a sacred relationship with your life.
Well, I think that could be a consequence, but I mean, I feel I've invented this material interpretation of it, which is basically there's a spiritual feeling, right? It's just like hunger. You have hunger, why? Evolutionarily, so you wouldn't starve. But then when there's plenty, you overeat, whatever. It's not automatically good. I think the Nazis there's negative spirituality.
Is it just functional though, Piero? Or is it something more than just functionality?
Is it innate? Is the question, really?
Well, I think it's automatically innate, because I think it has its own sense space, just like pain is different from vision, is different from sound, is different from hunger.
I would say at the level of consciousness that we are compared to every other animal, I think it's a requirement.
Well, that's the thing too, like etymologically, not that this is an argument, but the word spirit comes from the word for breath. And I read that that's true in most languages, not just Latin going to English or whatever. And it's breath. It means being alive. It's the quality of not being a dead thing.
That's what I'm saying. Is like
not a soul, unless that's why it explains it. It's not.
But you're making a differentiation that is not just base material like a stone.
It's about being a living thing.
Yeah,
right.
Following your spiritual.
What is the difference? We can't define it.
Well, we can, because we have this beautiful world called consciousness. We can define it. It's attached. We can't separate.
You can't analytically define it in that classical and analytic sense.
Yeah.
Right.
It's infinitely, complex. On the other hand, of course, you can characterize it by the ideas you have around the experiences you have where they felt spiritual.
Yep, the fact that we're alive, like I said before, I would still say I'm spiritual, but not in the same context as someone who was religious, right? Because that's a different context.
Yeah,
But
totally.
my,
That's
my,
one.
yeah,
Well, see, that's my idea here is that every time you had a spiritual feeling, anybody that's ever reported, and many people have reported the spiritual feeling, um, they were
it's,
alive.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's not
awesome.
about ghosts. It's
Yeah.
not about ghosts because they're not alive.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's about,
And
it's
I
about
think it's
existence.
super important because, yeah, it's stuff like what you were saying. You could put it in another language than sanctity or whatever. But yeah, the exact idea, the concept you're conveying with, we have this connection. When you have the spiritual feeling, you have this connection, and it can be to something negative or violent, even. But often, if you're healthy and not too miserable, even if you are a little miserable, but overall, you want to not be miserable, it'll be in a beautiful vista. Or when you played the guitar and you hit a groove and it's like, oh my God, and things feel right, things feel connected, you don't feel better than the world, you feel like you're a part of it, and a lot of positive things,
I get
but
that.
also their negative version, like the negative inverse of that also I think can happen with the same
Death.
feeling, just like overeating.
Yeah, but I mean, I get my kicks from. I mean, my main kicks are looking at pictures of the universe. That always just blows my mind. Like
Yeah,
I've never not been blown away by images of space. They just
yeah,
freak me out
me
in
too.
in
Yeah,
a good way. It's like,
or
wow,
any big vista, even of a city, but especially
yeah,
any
space,
big,
space.
where
It's
where
I
it's all
yeah.
miniature. It's all miniature, but it's big, and you're miniature, but you're
very
bigger, and
big.
it's the miniature. It looks like a miniature trail,
And then and then
rail
you look at
city,
atoms, and
railroad.
they blow. I love the fact that we have this mad conversion of the super super huge infinity, and then we got the super super tiny infinity, and they're both the same thing. That is just awesome. Like, do you know the space between your atoms is like mind-bogglingly big? It's the space we don't touch anything, but we do. It's like, how the
I
fuck
always
does
think
that
it's
work?
funny.
It's bizarre.
I always think it's funny on astronomy shows where they talk about how
Hello. Well, it looks like that troll jumped in and then can control Google. Oh, it's just I knew that would happen. So how long was it? I don't know if I'm still broadcasting, so I'm checking that right now by talking. Hello. Yeah. Well, it looks like that troll jumped in and then can control Google. Oh, it's just I knew that would happen. So yeah, I guess I am live again. Well, you could come back in. Still up. It's still up though. Up with me. I can't be the only one streaming from this other computer, not this computer. Oh, here's this guy again. Hey, what do you want to say? Black Nougat Revolution blocked me. Whatever. You blocked me? Why is it fun? Did mom not get you a Pepsi? That's punks, fuck off. What a shithead. Bothering me is the best thing that happened to you all day. You're so edgy with your racism. I never heard of racism before. People aren't racist, really. Don't make me shocked to the reality. Oh, is it even on? Because he says he blocked me. It said, you're so edgy with your racism. I never heard. Yeah. Well, I'm glad we got to talk about spirituality before the end there, but yeah, so and it's interesting, the sanctity and stuff. I think that these are words that a lot of theists have used and we can use secularly, but to me it's more like about motivation, human motivation. It's like spirituality feelings are about, it's a meta feeling, right? Like you have your sense feelings, and then you have ways you think about that, and abstractions above that and above that, and ways of life. And spirituality is like this capstone of the mixture of all your other feelings. Um, when it feels like everything's fitting together, all of these different things that conflict and are confusing, they fit together, and you feel like what you need to do, what you want to do, what's true. I really like theater, I like the outdoors, I love mathematics, whatever, kind of like the motorhead, the deadhead, you figured out what you like and you're into that, but in a functional way where you're productive, but maybe that's the area you get your job in, teaching or whatever it is. And you follow that, and maybe that's not an endpoint. Maybe you're led to that only to be led on to something else. And morality is basically there because sometimes these can be negative feelings. Like in an extreme case, religious fervor can be destructive and want to harm other people in an indiscriminate way that actually doesn't even necessarily go with the person that's going to commit this with their philosophy, but they're in a state where they're got tunnel vision and they're not looking at a bigger picture or whatever. And that's what a morality is for. You come up and you say, look, this says I should go to bed and climb this mountain. I just have to. And it's a spiritual is the only explanation. You just have this feeling that you're driven to do it. And it's like about your ultimate motivations, your strongest deciding motivations. And and fears you didn't even know you ought to have. It reminds you these, and you act on that, but you have your morality, because if it's saying to do something terrible that breaks the rules of morality, which is like things that you thought down when what the pressure wasn't on, you thought things through. What's reasonable? I'm feeling reasonable now. There's no crisis. And you figure out the morality, and it's like a list that you could compare against. It's like, oh, don't kill other people, because I was just now thinking I was going to kill this motherfucker. And so you compare your spiritual drives to a moral system that you've created ever since you were young, and that you're conscious about and have memorized, so that you don't forget at the crucial moment. And that's the basis of philosophy. Philosophy is really about learning how to handle your emotions. Yeah, analytic thought is a part of that, because it's an important part, because it's a really important tool, and it uses emotions like curiosity and wonder and conviction and the feeling of comprehension and I got it, eureka, and a whole set of feelings, which are some of that. Philosophy, though, the love of knowledge, requires handling all your emotions so that, one, they don't interfere with analytic thought, but also that they aren't considered inferior to analytic thought, which is limited. Your whole problem is all of your emotions, and how things like hunger, they make it so you don't starve when you're just an animal in the forest and you don't know what to do, but you know you want to eat something. And so then when there's plenty and you overeat, it becomes a danger. All of your emotions are like this, and you should consider it's like spirituality. You have to do it. It's there to keep you from spiritually dying, and your motivational faculties of wanting to live. It's there to make your desire to live not go away, right? And yet it can lead you into violence, because, like, if you're a slave, it might lead you into wanting to revolt. And maybe even in that case, you should, but often, no. And so you need a moral system that says the why and the wherefore. And if there's an exception, make it conscious, and you compare that with your spiritual path, and you will find many non-violence. Really, violence is the line there for me, but people might draw their line wherever, I guess, in the broad sense. But what happened, Barklord, is that guy that came in kicked you all out. But it should be the same link because I'm still up, and when last I checked, it was streaming. So anyway, yeah, that's the idea. And then philosophy is really logic, logos in the big sense of the objects and transformations of logic are really emotions. Like you have an emotion, and even seeing a red apple is actually an emotion. All the colors make an emotion, and the apple is a kind of emotion, an appleness feeling, and the primary feelings we get of hunger and everything come together, or like an example of a recipe of feelings is taste. You have all the taste buds, 5 or whatever different taste buds, and smell, and even vision, adding to this thing you experience as a flavor, a chocolate cake, and it all comes as one, but you also could see all the parts of it, and we've been able to analyze, look, it's based on these sense emotions and stuff, and they all get combined, and then it has its own sense space. And so how they're all composed and which thing is an emotion that's composed of another thing and might not have its own sense space, or is it actually possible that with any given set of sense spaces you could create a hypothetical one that has its own feeling, because hunger is different from pain, is different from lust, is different from comprehension, is different from the spiritual feeling. So okay, it says you're not allowed to come in because you got blocked. Well, do you want to continue? I could start another one, but I think it's kind of late actually. I guess we let that guy call it an evening, you guys, because that was 2 hours. So thanks for coming. And when I publish nobody publishes the links anymore because this happens, but we got a good 2 hours. So I say it's like lava. It's a tragic natural disaster that you live with, and in reality, it creates the island. All right. Cheers, you guys. Thanks for coming. Sorry he'd probably just come back at this point. 2 hours. It's midnight. I'm supposed to start a new job tomorrow, so I don't want to stay up too late. So, cheers.